what an honor it is to bring in a cat, an incredibly versatile person in general who kind of wound up in defense contracting, but before that made a name as a multi-instrumentalist and an incredible studio musician, as well as a band leader in his own right, working with really being a founding member of Steely Dan and also joining the Doobie Brothers. And it was interesting because when I saw this press release go out last week about this tour, well, it was just very interesting to see the kind of places that he's playing, and I'm curious about what his intentions are for this upcoming tour. Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, sir. And I haven't quit playing. I still, want to protect the country, but I also want to rock and roll.
Absolutely. No, it's funny because I have to. Go ahead.
No, I just say I read articles that 10 people who have changed careers. I haven't changed careers at all. I just want to serve my country. So you can do both.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I completely agree. And I just have to ask you, I'm going to go on a hunch here, but I've talked to so many cats that loved Manny's music. And I'm wondering if that was the place. I know you worked there, but I'm wondering if you bought your first pedal steel there.
Well, actually, I worked at Jimmy's across the street.
You worked at... Okay, so again, Wikipedia just says Manny's. We've got to get to that career. What was Jimmy's?
Jimmy's was right across the street. Jim and Frank Squilacci hired me to work on vacations because I was going to boarding school in the U.S., but I was living in Mexico City, so instead of going back and forth all the time, I would just stay in New York and I would work at Jimmy's, and then I eventually ended up working at Dan Armstrong's shop. All these stores on 48th Street. The connection to Manny's is Henry Goldrick, who was sort of the guru there for many, many, many years. Kind of looked out for me because I was 3,000 miles away from home, and we became very good friends, and he just always kept an eye on me. So Manny's always had a very special place in my heart, and Henry Goldrick, God bless him, what an incredible human being. You meet people in your life who are just the right people at the right time. Tim Jacrimo was another one of those people who ran E.U. Wurlitzer Music in Boston. I used to repair guitars for those guys, well, for a lot of people in Boston. And one day I walked in to E.U. Wurlitzer, and there was a beautiful Emmons double-neck D10 pedal steel.
Oh, my God.
Sitting in the middle of the floor. And I walked over to it, and I looked at it, and I must have stared at it for about 30 seconds, and Tim came over and said, "Take it. I'll take 10% out of every guitar that you repair." I didn't even have to ask him.
Oh, man.
Again, those are the kind of people in your life that you can't. Life it becomes so much better. And Henry at Manny's, I had asked him. When I first started doing the defense stuff, I said, there are a lot of people that are, think I'm crazy for doing this stuff. And what do you think? And it was on a Saturday. And Henry and I had known Henry for so many years. And he said, "Let's go upstairs and talk." Right in the middle of the most crowded, busiest time. So it just goes to show you. And then he said, "Tell me what you think." And we talked, and then he finally said, "You have to do this. You need to do this." And so here's a guy who supposedly just ran a music store, who was also one of my mentors on a subject that had nothing to do with music. So
no, this is first of all, this is like mine. So I understand Mexico City, and then there was Taft, but you actually went back.
That's where I was going to school at Taft.
Right. So I'm just trying to get the idea of like you had already been committed to defending our country at that point when you went to talk to him.
No, because when I was at Taft, I was just going to prep school. But because at the time I was working at Jimmy's and going across the street to see Henry, who would become a friend. Years later, I always kept in touch with Henry, and I always go down to 48th Street anyway. I was a 48th Street kid, and later on in life, I went down there to talk to Henry, and that's when.
Oh, okay. So it was late. That is so beautiful, man. Yeah. So you were just like, can you like talk a little bit about the calling you had for this? Did you feel like, I mean, you were too young to serve in Vietnam. What was the calling for that? I'm 45, and it's like there's a lot of ambivalence towards. Just in general, there's just a lot of ambivalence towards everything these days. But I'm just trying to figure out when you got that calling inside to defend this country.
Well, I showed up for my draft physical. They just didn't take me. And years later, I mean, my dad was 6 years active, 20 years reserve.
Wow.
So I'd grown up in a family that was certainly oriented, let's say, towards patriotism and defending my country.
Sure.
And especially when you grow up outside the U.S., you have a very interesting view of your home country when you see it from a different perspective. But it just, I don't know. I think my dad had instilled in me those principles of patriotism and service. And since I didn't get to serve before, when the opportunity came, it was kind of off the wall. My dad always said, if you got a good idea, you write it down.
Right.
So I had an idea about how to convert a Navy air defense system, the Aegis weapon system. It's an integrated system, missiles, radar, communications. How to convert it to do missile defense. And so I wrote the paper, like my dad just said, write it down. So I gave it to a U.S. congressman who I'd been doing some work with because of my law enforcement work with LAPD and some other law enforcement agencies. And he then gave it to the vice chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, who then called Congressman Rohrabacher and said, what is this guy from, like, Raytheon or Boeing? Or he's a guitar player for the Doobie Brothers. So I get this call from the vice chairman, and he says, would you be willing to serve on the House Armed Services Committee and put as a civilian advisor on missile defense? And I said, yes, I certainly. And then that's kind of where it all got started. And then in 93, after the first attack on the World Trade Center, I got a call from some other folks in the intelligence community and said, listen, we're putting together a law enforcement working group. We got plenty of intelligence agents, but we have no cops. And you have already all these clearances for the Department of Energy, Department of Defense. Would you be willing to come in and be a part of this law enforcement working group? And I said yes. And then that's how I went over to the IC.
Well, I mean, this is just profound information. Again, if there was one thing you could tell younger cats in this country about the profound nature of how lucky we are to live in this country, being that you were in Mexico City, and I guess you might have hopped around a little bit more, but what would it be? What would be a couple of things to be grateful about this country when you see it from the outside?
Well, I remember one time I was up on the Thai-Burma border. We were doing something up there. I can't really talk too much about it.
It's okay, yeah.
We were bringing refugees across the border from Burma. They were being pursued by the Burmese army, and they wanted to come into Thailand. Many of them were children. And we had copies of the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the U.S. Constitution translated into Hmong, Hmong, Karenin, Wa, the different languages that you would find in Burma, Thailand.
Right.
people were coming 100 miles through the jungles just to get their hands on those documents to read them. And then I remember it was a very tough day, long day, and again, I can't get into too many details, but we had a lot of children, and the children were frightened because the Burmese army was literally shooting at them. It was a busy day, let's just say that.
Let's just say that, yeah.
It started raining, and I was up there with Dana and a couple of other people, Congressman Roebuck, and they said, we got to do something. Kids are scared to death. So somebody gave me a guitar made out of a cigar box, had 4 strings on it, and said, you got to do something. So we gathered the kids together. None of them spoke English. And we taught them how to sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Oh, my
We
God.
divided them into 3 groups. And we taught them how to sing the round together. We did that for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, until the kids calmed down. So all I can say is you would not have believed what they called the hospital, what they called the refugee camps. And still, these people came through the jungles to get copies of these special documents in their hands. So if by anyone out there who thinks, yes, this country has problems, nothing's perfect, but people are willing to die to come and even read about this country. So
that is so. I mean, I just got chills, man. That is so profound, and I know that is just scratching the surface.
And by the way, if you're a musician,
yeah,
you're a freedom fighter, because they were cutting the hands. The Taliban was cutting the hands off of musicians in Afghanistan, and that's one of the reasons. Well, again, I can't get into too much stuff, but pissed me off.
Yeah, go ahead.
And Danny, you know Cooch, Danny Korshwar?
Dear, I love him to death. So much, done a bunch of interviews with him. Yeah.
So Cooch is an old buddy. We've known each other since the '60s. And at one of the NAMM shows, we had talked, and Danny got up at the NAMM show and explained to people that every note that you play as a musician, that you're a freedom fighter. The reason they cut the hands off of musicians in Afghanistan is because they were frightened to death of people who had the key to other people's hearts. All that stuff is all fear-based. And the fact that a musician could open someone's heart scared them so much that they wanted to prevent them from playing music. And Cooch got up there for a half an hour, and it was beautiful to watch.
Oh, man.
When he came off stage, I went, geez, Cooch, that was awesome. Damn it. I've been around you long enough to know, and I just felt I had to say something. So all you folks out there, this country is very special. There's nothing like it, and it's certainly worth your time and effort to try to contribute as much as you can.
The reason I brought up the pedal steel, I'm curious about. I'm curious about, like Fire in the Hole.
Beautiful instrument.
Yeah, no, the Fire. I'm just curious, like, what were some of the records? Was there any record before Fire in the Hole that, I mean, outside of Weldon Myrick and all these guys from Nashville that were playing the pedal steel on country music? I mean, was the Fire in the Hole one of the earliest rock tunes to incorporate the pedal steel?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. I mean, there's some great players. You mentioned Weldon, Buddy Emmons, Curly Chalker.
Yeah, Lloyd Green, yeah.
Lloyd Green. I mean, Paul Franklin now out there in Nashville, just a killer player.
Unreal.
But I always looked at Sneaky Pete, who also...
Oh, flying, yeah. Okay.
Looked at the pedal steel kind of like I did from a kind of sideways, point of view.
What does that mean? What does that mean, by the way? Because you played guitar?
Well, a lot of guys, looked at the pedal steel as a country instrument. Now, guys like Buddy Emmons and people like that were playing bebop and classical music. I mean, they were looking at it as a
absolutely.
But most cats really didn't see it that way. So I remember when we did East St. Louis Toodaloo, in Steely Dan.
Pretzel Logic, yeah.
The Duke Ellington song. We're all jazz fans anyway, and it was fun to dissect the song, and each of us took a different part. Walter took the trumpet part and played it with the speaker box, and I transcribed the trombone solo.
Wow!
Played it on pedal steel simply because I thought, okay, here's an instrument that has slide. Trombone has a slide. You can move pitch between instruments. What the hell? Let's see where this is going to go. So I just, as I've been playing steel now for 40-some years, 40, almost 50 years, the instrument constantly amazes me. I've got a MIDI version of a pedal steel, which just is the frightening instrument. You know, you could do choirs, string sections, all kinds of stuff. And to me, the voice of the steel is something that's so special. That's on this Speed of Heat album that I did. There's a song called The Rose, which is the one that Bette Midler had done.
Right. But
I had been asked by Guitar Player magazine when I was on their board of directors or board of advisors for the 25th anniversary to play something while they ran the pictures of, our fallen comrades in the music business, guitar players. And so I thought, The Rose is such a beautiful melody. I'm just going to go out and play it a cappella.
Absolutely.
The voice is so beautiful. But as I got to the end of the first verse, Adrian Belew came out and plugged in. And I love Adrian. He's one of my favorite people. And by the time I got to the end of the second verse, I had a keyboard player, drummer, bass player, plus Adrian. And I thought, someday I want to do this song. And I dedicated it to my dad. And on this Speed of Heat album, you'll hear the whole first verse is all a cappella steel. The voice of the instrument is so compelling.
Oh, my God. Absolutely profound. I mean, there's just so much going on here because but by the way, we're also, despite the age difference, we're both graduates of the College of Communication at Boston University.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, man. And it was so classic because I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna roll this out here. Is that Skunk was Skunk going to? There was a place called the Psychedelic Supermarket. That was a place for maybe Ultimate Spinach, or were you going to Club 47, or were you going everywhere?
All those places.
Oh my God!
Certainly played the Tea Party in both of its iterations.
Oh my God!
Played the surf clubs, and I played in the Combat Zone.
That's what. Okay, no, let's talk about that. That was the strip clubs you played. You were playing. Were you playing soul jazz, organ jazz there, or what was going on there?
Playing with the Sid Caesar Trio.
Oh my!
Which was an organ player, a drummer, and myself.
Dude, this is making my year, man. Are you kidding me, dude?
I was playing at the Intermission Lounge. And the Crazy Horse next door, which had all the chickenware. That's what I mentioned that to Dan Aykroyd, and I think that's where he got the idea of it for the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
But you're young, so the Combat Zone when we were down there, this was in the late '60s.
This is insane.
That was insanity.
Okay, I just want before you go on, because I've talked to cats that were there in the there was a murder there in the mid-'70s, and it was still hopping in the early '70s. What was that? Was it a mafia-run place where you're playing Milestones for 20 minutes? I mean, I just need to hear exactly what was going on in the Combat Zone.
Whether it was run by the mafia, I do not know. I did know that for a while on the Sid Caesar Trio, our manager was a guy named Mambo Willie, who was a pimp and a manager. Nice cat. I mean, eventually somebody shot him.
Right. I mean, it was going to bound to happen.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
What do you do when you have 6,000 sailors all coming into like a 6-block radius, right?
God.
That's beyond insane. But It was fun to play because I played a lot of crazy clubs. Hell, when I came out to Los Angeles and started playing at the Palomino Club, also started playing clubs out in Lancaster and Palmdale and up in Bakersfield. That stuff could get pretty wild sometimes.
I mean, dude, this is. I do not want to. I want to be very clear. Were you in Warren Towers? Where were you living, by the way? Like your freshman year at BU?
Say again, sorry.
I was just curious about what dorms you were living in.
I lived in at
Was it Warren Towers?
West Campus.
West. That's where I lived.
Yeah, where the private football stadium.
And you would, and so it's fair to say that you'd be
James Montgomery. That's where we met.
Well, that was the other, but I just want to be clear. Like you were by freshman year, sophomore year, you were playing 6 nights a week, 3-4 sets a night.
No, it was after that because I only went to BU for 1 year. I didn't graduate.
Wow. So you
graduated from SBC. I only went for a year. I took a leave of absence. Maybe I should go back.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd have me, but
get the honorary degree. So but you were playing so much and gigging so much, you were making enough bread. You didn't feel the need to have to finish school, right?
Well, I got the opportunity to join Ultimate Spinach, and I was already out playing bass for Tim Buckley. And I was playing in this really wacky band called the Holy Modal Rounder.
Well, that's what I couldn't believe that because that is folk music.
Those guys, and Steve Weber. Oh man!
How did you wind up connecting? Was that the Cambridge connection of the folk scene there? How did you connect with those guys?
I'm not sure. Roger, a really cool set of drums that he was playing around the area, and I guess somebody had seen it, or I wish I knew how I ended up in that band.
It is such a blip on the. It is so important. I mean, I get it. It was a long time ago. It's just that band was. I know cats that played in later iterations of that band, and it was a wild scene.
Well, Steve and Peter we used to play with the Fugs,
right?
And Thule Kupferberg and those guys, and I met them when I was playing in the Village when I was still going to boarding school. So somehow or other, maybe we got connected up again. I'm sorry,
It's okay. No, Skunk. I want to be clear. You were taking Metro North from Connecticut into New York at boarding school.
Metro North.
Well, what I'm saying is like I'm just trying to get the idea because you talk about Cooch in the flying machine with James Taylor, David Clayton Thomas, all those cats were down in the Village.
Yeah.
But you were in Connecticut. Would you drive in or would you take the train?
Oh no, I would take the train down during the vacations and stay with friends in New York.
Wow. And so you were already, even though you weren't necessarily of age, you were already. I mean, you were. Did you play with? Did you have a band there? Were you playing with us, or were you just sitting in and jamming?
No, sitting in jamming a lot. We had a band that a prep school band that we actually played at the World's Fair, and then we played some in the Village, and then I played some shows with the band at the Goldbug Cafe.
Wow.
And then there was a million clubs around the city. Plus, this really whacked out group called the Vic Goldring Orchestra. It was all like 80-year-old guys, sax, organ, drums, and I was the kid at weddings and the bar mitzvahs that would stand up and play one Chuck Berry song every 20 songs. Meanwhile, I'm reading out of fake books, and that's where I'm learning all the standards.
Whoa! Sorry, need to hear the name of this band again. What was the name?
The Vic Goldring Orchestra.
Thank you so much. You're making my year. This was a bunch of.
We played a lot at the Tivoli Terrace out on Long Island, and
oh my God!
oh my God! Just.
No, I was going to say the band that Skunk's referring to from Taft is King Thunder and the Lightning Bolts.
Yes, and the rubber band, but King Thunder and the Lightning Bolts. That was when my first year there. Randy Palomar was a senior and put together this rock band, and we started playing all the dances, and then a couple of guys from that band, we formed a band called the Rubber Band,
Right.
and we started. I started getting in trouble. You know how it is. You know, you're 14, 15.
Come on,
16
of course.
years old.
Yeah.
You go to girls' schools, you
Yeah.
get in trouble. And anyway, so they said you can't play any more school dances. So the school boycotted the first dance that we didn't play at. So the dean said, "Well, okay, it's okay that you can play." And then we started getting gigs around in all the girls' schools, St. Margaret's, Ethel Walker, Emma Willard. And because we were all the troublemakers, we were part of this group called the Head Waiters. We were the ones that, you know, he wanted to keep us in a group so he'd keep an eye on us. But the dean, Mr. Oscarson, Donald Oscarson, God bless his soul, really cool guy, he said, "Okay, I'm getting calls from all of these schools." And I said, "Well, why don't you manage the band?"
Oh, man.
You know, so we gave him 5%, and he would answer the calls to all these girls' schools, and a couple of friends of ours from in town would drive us out there, and we would play these gigs. So it was kind of wacky, you know, and we even finally, the school decided that they had to give us credit. I mean, the dance band they never played anywhere.
Nowhere.
We
You
played
guys were
all
touring,
the
man.
gigs.
Oh, my God.
So, well, I guess we did tour. We did tour all the girls' schools.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Oski was taking 5%, and it was perfect. Couldn't beat that.
Did you, I mean, so did you first meet Buckley? I mean, he was infatuated with Fred Neil. Did you meet him when you were headed to the city, or did you meet him in Boston?
I met him in Boston because, again, I'm working in Dave Schechter from Schechter Guitars, and I had a guitar store called the Burbank Street Guitar Shop.
Wow.
We were building and repairing guitars, and I was doing a lot of custom work from having learned so much from Dan Armstrong when I was working at Dan's place on 48th Street. So every musician on the planet would come in and want either some custom work done or repairs and stuff. So I think that's where I met Tim Buckley. He had a Guild F50, I think it was, that needed repair. And then he said he needed a bass player. I said, well, okay, sure. So I grabbed a Hagstrom Viking bass and started doing some shows with him. In some of those places that you were talking about, Club 47, you know, places in Cambridge. Yeah.
Was there? I'm curious about, like, did you play the bass fiddle? Because, like, I remember talking to David Friedman, a great vibes player, and he said that Tim's bands didn't necessarily, they were drummerless bands, and actually it was some of the closest things. I mean, it was folk music, but in terms of, like, the jazz concept of improvisation, it was about as pretty close to that as you could get.
Well, yeah, there was no drummer. C.C. Carter Collins.
That's right, congas, yes.
Was a percussionist, killer.
Unreal, dude. Unreal.
And so we had this very unique band, I guess, yeah.
Did you make it? I often like to think that I'd like to have gone up to, Small's Paradise. Did you get to go see Grant Green or Wes and those cats?
When I was a kid in the village, I would go to the village gate, top of the gate, and see all of those guys. And my dad used to take me to, trying to think of a place on 52nd Street. Judy Singleton and those guys. Boy, getting old as a dancer.
It's all right. No, I'm saying, so did you ever, I guess you obviously, you learned the standards in that band, but did you ever have that jazz life? I mean, we're at that time in music, I mean, did you just want to be a sort of a master of all, jack of all trades, or was there ever
I just wanted to play the guitar.
Yeah.
And up at Dan Armstrong's shop, I mean, the guys that were hanging out at that shop, Sam Brown.
Are you kidding me, dude? My hero, dude.
These guys,
Oh
and
my!
I'm just a snot-nosed little kid. So Dan hands me a guitar with 4 bass strings, 2 bass strings, and 4 regular guitars. I think it was a Gretsch. Said, your job is to comp chords and play bass lines.
Yes,
and so I
dude.
learned that style of playing. And when I ran into Chet Atkins, his guitar player, Chet and I had done something together, and his guitar player said, where did you learn that? I said, that's where I learned it from, being with Danny and those guys, because he could play that style as well. And he had a guitar with 2 bass strings and 4 regular strings. So hanging around those cats, I mean, it doesn't get any better. Eddie Deal, my God.
Come on, dude.
What a guitarist. What a bebopper. Jesus. So, to me, being immersed in, I'd say it was Guitar 101.
At the time, this is fast. I mean, you already were basically. I mean, you had so much experience, but at the time in the early '70s in LA, Louis Shelton, Dean Parks, Larry Carlton. I'm like, Skunk. Where was the? It wasn't. How did you couldn't just waltz into the studios? I mean, you must have had a connection. How did you wind up moving? I mean, it's funny because all those early Steely albums have such a. I mean, obviously there's a song Brooklyn, but they have like an East Coast feel to them. But I'm like, Skunk went to the West. He went to L.A. How did you get into the studios?
I started. First thing I did when I got out here was went to work at a place called Valley Sound, repairing and building guitars.
Of course.
And you meet everybody, every guitar player, because we were really one of the premier places to do that. And then next thing I knew, guys were saying, hey, I got a date. I need a sub. Can you do it? And it just, I don't know, folded into the studio scene.
So how quickly after that did you meet Steely? I mean, were they actually recording out there, or how did that work?
Well, I met Walter Becker and Donald Fagen in Boston when Gary Katz, the producer for Steely Dan,
legend, yeah,
was producing a band called the Bead Game. Great Boston band.
Wow.
And I was doing a session in that same studio, and Gary heard me play guitar, and he said, would you come down to New York to play on a Linda Hoover album, this lady that he was producing? And the songwriters are these 2 guys named Becker and Fagen. You don't know them, but would you come down and do it? And I said, sure. Happy to do it, because I was commuting back and forth between Boston and New York at the time. And I went down there, and that's when I met them. And they said, well, I've never really heard anybody play guitar like that. I said, well, I've never heard anybody write material like this. So we all said that sort of whoever gets their nose under the tent, everybody's going to call everybody else, and maybe we'll form a band. And they got a publishing deal out here. They said, let's form this band. They said, we need a singer. So I said, well, I knew Dave Palmer from doing gigs in New York, and Jimmy Hodder was the drummer for the Bead Game. Great singer, great drummer. And then they had a good friend, Denny Diaz, who's the other guitar player, and there we go.
Did you, some of those later albums once they got into, I've talked to Dean, Chuck Rainey, Keltner, and, there was so many machinations, different rhythm sections, you get different stories here and there. Those early, Countdown to Ecstasy, My Daughters, we live on that album. When you look back at those first couple of albums, was it a lot less sort of, because it was more of I don't want to say a family band, but a band, like you said, whoever gets their nose under the tent first. Did a lot of those early tunes on those early Steely albums, were they first, second takes, and or were you all hitting live at the same time?
No, a lot of the stuff was going in and doing overdubs.
Really?
It was crafted. Again, Jimmy was a studio drummer. I was a studio guitar player. To me, that's the way you made records. I didn't, I had done a few live albums, but I'm a session rat, so it makes perfect sense to me to go at it that way.
One final question for you, Skunk, is when was you've met everybody before you, in some cases collaborated with them, but I have to believe that you must have run into Bob Weir at some point and the Grateful Dead. I mean, I had no idea that you actually played with Bobby and the Midnights with Kenny Gradney and Bobby Cochran.
I produced a record with them. Yeah.
So was that the first time you got acquainted with them, or because I know those cats, Garcia and those cats were going in. Not that you worked at Manny's, but those kinds of bands were always in there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of how.
I really am stretching you out here. I'm sorry to stretch you out so much. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's good because it stimulates my.
Yeah, right. It's good for the memory, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think I got a call from his manager asking me if I would produce a record. I think that's how that happened.
Explain to me why. I know you didn't have a whole lot to do with this, but my favorite bands, the Road Dogs, and I know you're not a road dog. Believe me, you're a studio rat. But this tour that you're playing, I don't know if it's just coincidence, but when I saw the venues, I freaked out because these are all the venues that my friends who are road dogs, and believe me, it was never easy, but it's harder than ever now. Why did you choose this certain? I mean, San Juan Capistrano, the Stagecoach, bunch of stuff. San Luis Obispo. I mean, these venues.
The Coach House, right?
Yeah, I mean, This is a very interesting tour. I'm just curious about your intention for this tour. You're not being a Live Nation cat. You're not, because a lot of this stuff got really blissed out, and it's kind of lame now. But you're keeping it pretty accessible. I mean, a lot of these venues, if I could go, I could be right up front in your face.
Well, it's fun to play. I mean, listen, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. I've played in front of 500,000 people. I've done all the stadiums and the tours and stuff, and that's all wonderful. There's just something about going out and playing in a more intimate setting. Maybe it's back to my New York roots. I don't know. Same when I grew up in Mexico City. I mean, I was playing in Mexican rock and roll bands. We were playing clubs. I was only 11 or 12 years old. Actually, Abraham Laboriel and I had a surf band.
I need you to stop, dude. He's one of my dearest uncles. I cannot believe, because his brother was a pop star there, singer.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me that Abe and you had a surf band in Mexico City together.
Yeah, called the Tarantulas.
Oh my God!
Now, Abe was one of my favorite people on the planet.
He's one of the most. I've had the opportunity to be with him personally quite a bit and interview. I love him so much. And Skunk, are you going to be in Arizona at all? Like, I really would love to come see you play. I know this is like, I'm just curious about, is this a one-off kind of thing? Are you, for lack of a better word, are you horny to play live? I mean, it seems like you need to get some stuff out of your system.
Well, we've done a couple of East Coast tours. We did a Japanese tour late last year. Or early this year. And this is our second time down the West Coast. So, yeah, I plan to do, we thought maybe during the winter we'd have a look and see what, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, areas that probably better to travel in, while the East Coast, of course, we're about to have a hurricane here, but while the East Coast is mired in snow, go down and play the South, go play Arizona.
Yeah, that's right. You're out in L.A. or because the hurricane's going to come in. Tucson, we might even get some flooding too here, but it would be just great to see you, man. I truly am. I mean, I could go for hours, but maybe we can do this again sometime, especially if you're going to come to Zona. But it was really such a high honor to talk to you, man.
Well, you're very kind, my friend. I appreciate the compliment, and Yeah, we're looking forward to heading down to the Belly Up and then the Coach House and doing the Troubadour next week.
Yeah, the belly up,
Some
dude.
must have
The
been a
dude, belly
million shows there.
Solano. That I mean, this is so scrap. I love how scrap iron this is. I know it's not like. I'm just saying the cats today, man. They're starving to death, man. They don't even make money. I mean, I think that you say that you're the luckiest guy in the world, but I also believe that, as Branch Rikki said, luck is the residue of design, and you always put yourself out there in vulnerable situations. Obviously, you had. But what I feel the most is that, your pops is looking down, and he's certainly proud
Definitely.
he's proud of every chance you took and how you applied all that knowledge, and ultimately all the people that you've touched through your music, man. So have a safe
He's
trip,
a pretty
man.
adventurous guy himself.
Oh my! I cannot imagine what he was
Did
like.
you ever see Mad Men?
Yeah, that's him.
Senior Executive Vice President of J. Walter Thompson, largest advertising agency in the world. Now, he didn't have the issues and all that, but that was my dad. That was his world.
You just went to Never Ever Land on me, Skunk. Yo, man. Much love to you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for your time and your hospitality.
It's always a pleasure, brother. Be safe, be cool.
Roger that. You too.
All right, later.